My name is Berger, and I'm an actress. I've known Florence Belsky since 1953. You figure out the number of years. I'm not good at math, but I know it's a pretty long time. I was entertaining up at the Timberland in the Adirondacks, that was an adult camp. And Florence used to come every weekend because she knew the owner so well. And one day when she got out of the car, a group of people mobbed her and said, "You were wonderful last night." And she said, "Wonderful? What did I do?" I said, "The play you were in was wonderful." She said, "That's not me. You're confusing me with someone else. However, I want to meet the person that you're confusing with me." So they brought her over to the bunk where the actors all stayed. And she saw me stitching a gray skirt with purple thread. She was appalled. As far as I was concerned, if the hem stayed up, that was enough. "No, take that skirt off," she said. I was intimidated. I had to take it off. And for hours and hours and hours, if you remember the style in 1950s, tight waist and yards and yards and yards of material, she sat for hours stitching that gray skirt with gray thread. And stitching that skirt was symbolic of how our friendship was stitched together firmly since 1953. I'll never forget her generosity. She would have been my maid of honor if I had not had sisters. But Florence was a sister to me anyway, even more than a sister. I looked up to her. I felt that any question in the world I could ask Florence, she would have the answer. Whether it was personal, political, culinary, anything. You name the subject, she knew everything. I was in awe of Florence. I was in awe of Florence for years and years and years. And anything she said, I felt that it was holy, it was right. But I know everybody's not always right, but I always felt that if ever I went to Florence for advice, which I did very often, I would always get a very definite answer. But when I told her that I was in awe of her all these years, I finally told her, "I've been in awe of you all these years." And she said, "You've been in awe of me," like she was shocked. She said, "I've always been in awe of you." Now that was a very diplomatic thing, that she was full of diplomacy, so I don't know if that's really true, but what a thing to say, how really gracious that was. In awe of her, absolutely. If Belsky said something, if she told me the sky was purple, I'd have to look 3 times to make sure that Belsky is purple. Florence Belsky met Bob Malasky, my husband. It was at Timberland, the same resort that I talked about. And she flipped over Bob. She thought Bob was great. She said to me, "Annie, if you don't marry Bob, I'm going to."
Usually, she had the capacity to intimidate people, but I found that she was a marshmallow once I got past the intimidation phase.
She loved her friends, and if any one of her friends had an event, a concert, a performance, no matter what part of the world it was, she would get there and support whatever artist was there performing. Florence never had to stay in a hotel. She traveled the world over and over and over again, but never had to stay in a hotel. And why? Because she knew everybody so personally and they all loved her. She always had a place, a home to go to. She'd be a guest. And she in turn, of course, turned her house into a home for anybody whom she knew who lived abroad. And she had the most interesting and fascinating people all the time. We looked forward to every single party that Florence Belsky had. And we looked forward to every single visit with Florence Belsky that we ever had. It was an education, it was joyous, it was fun, it was loving. And Florence will always be in my heart. And when I think of her gone now, it's something I can scarcely believe. I never thought that Florence Belsky would ever die. And I seem to be missing her now more than I ever thought I would. There's not one day that goes by that I don't think of Florence Belsky. And there are times when I'm confronted with a decision to have to make. I'm all set to reach for the phone. until I realized that Belsky is no longer with us in body, but she certainly is with us in spirit every day. And I sometimes think I have a decision to make. I say, what would Florence say? What would Florence do? And I try to think of what she might do, and I try to do the same thing.